This is major breaking news. We are now seeing hundreds of U.S. troops go into Mexico right now, right? Hundreds of troops have been deployed into Mexico, and they're preparing for a major disaster to happen. That's what they're doing right now. They're getting ready. Over 500 U.S. troops and Mexican troops combined are getting ready for a major disaster to happen right over the border, right? So this is big that they are doing this, and we could even see potentially Mexican troops come into the U.S. and prepare and get ready and set up, be preemptive for these disasters as well. So let's get into the details here really quick. Please just hit it up for me down there to help get this warning out so people know what's going on in our country, because there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a big chessboard, right? And a lot of pieces are being moved around, and they're potentially getting ready for something big, and that's what they're even warning of. Right now, they're getting ready for a major disaster, and they're doing this major exercise with hundreds of troops that have been sent over into Mexico. All right, so this is big, and it's something you should be aware of, and you should be ready for. This disaster that they're prepping for, this is something that we've talked about multiple times on this channel, and it's something that we could see a big one happen soon, right? So you guys can see here that the U.S. has sent over 220 soldiers in to Mexico, right? And they said they are preparing for a major disaster, right? They're doing a major drill with the Mexican army for a disaster that could affect the U.S. and Mexico, right? There's a reason why they do these drills, and they use them to get troops into place and to be ready for big events like this, right? You can see here American troops cross into Juarez, Mexico on Monday morning to take part in a joint disaster response exercise with the Mexican army, right? And it says a video taken by a border report camera crew shows military helicopters crossing into Mexican airspace around 9:30 a.m. Witnesses said they included a large Chinook type cargo helicopter and 2 Blackhawks, right? And it says the purpose of the exercise is to improve readiness and to strengthen the two nations' cooperation and relationships. It says the GTFCS will serve as a command and control element directing U.S. troops conducting natural disaster response exercises alongside the Mexican military forces. You can see here is some of the equipment that they had. They were also getting prepared for a chemical, biological, radiological event. That's also some of the drills and preparation that was taking place, and they were doing a simulation of treating people from a mass casualty event from a chemical, biological, radiological event here, right? That's why they got the full hazmat on. So pretty big that they're doing this jointly, working together like this, because if something like this ever happened where the U.S. and Mexico are working together like this, and think about it, the U.S. border is wide open. We know what's going on down there. We know that we don't actually control our borders. We've lost control. These groups have completely taken over, right? And we don't know what's coming into our country as well. We don't know what's going on. There could be something being brought into our country. There could be people being brought into our country. Just yesterday, law enforcement insiders were warning they had to spill the beans on this big operation that's going on inside of our country, right? And they're warning that we got extremely lucky that something didn't just happen, and a big one might happen soon. All right, so this is big that they're doing this drill. It says for one of the specific training exercises, it says a total of 500 soldiers from both countries will be responding to a earthquake-related disaster. and they include the collapse of a stadium, a chemical spill at a wastewater plant, a train derailment involving tank cars carrying hazardous material. And by the way, there was just a train derailment in Illinois earlier today, and they ordered evacuations at first, but then they called them off because there was potentially a hazardous chemical leak, right? But then they investigated, it was a fuel leak. So it was bad, contaminates the area, but it's not toxic waste, all right, you have to evacuate. But that's something that just happened today in Illinois. And the collapse of an airport terminal. That's another thing that they are getting prepared for. It says the troops also will be setting up a mobile field hospital for a mass casualty scenario, the Mexican army said in a statement. So this is big that they're preparing for this. And specifically this earthquake. We've been seeing a lot of this activity. If you guys remember, I made a video just a few days ago of how the magma is refilling at Mount St. Helens, and Mount Rainier is having a bunch of activity as well, and is getting warnings as well, but the magma pools are refilling at Mount St. Helens, right? We've also seen these very high frequency of earthquakes that keep hitting in Southern California as well, within 100-mile radiuses of, epicenters for the San Andreas Fault. So we keep seeing a lot of geological activity. We keep seeing earthquakes in the middle of the country as well, near Missouri, and along the fault lines that run through the North American Craton. So it's big that they're getting ready for this. And the National Guard also did a major drill just a few months ago as well for a major 9.2 earthquake that hit Alaska. The Alaskan National Guard was getting ready for that. And they were saying if that hits, then there's going to be tsunami warnings. There's going to be major disruptions, major flooding potentially, and then reactionary earthquakes and displacements along the West Coast and along the entire belt. There's an entire belt that moves along the West Coast. And they were saying that we could see activity there as well. And they were doing a major drill for a 9.2 megaquake to hit Alaska just a few months ago. And they actually had over a 9.0 earthquake hit decades ago, right? I think it was in the 70s, maybe it was 60s or 70s. They had one of these major earthquakes hit, but it was a lot less populated then. There are a lot more people out there. It's still extremely low populated in Alaska, but there's a lot more people, and the devastation, the cities that have been built up would be at risk, right? Just look at all these things they're warning of: chemical spills, train derailments, stadium collapse, airport collapse. So be prepared and be ready. It's one of these things, you're not going to know when the big one hits preemptively. It's just going to happen. So that's why it's critical to just be getting prepared, getting ready, getting your prepper pantry, just add in one more can to it, add in one more bag of rice to it, one more bag of beans, one more bag of flour, right? Getting one more tank of water, or gallon of water, jug of water, whatever you do for water storage. Just getting one more, all right, and putting it away. So if anything like this ever happens near you, then you aren't affected by these disruptions, these supply chain disruptions that are going to happen. All these things, there's going to be a lot of chaos if one of these megaquakes hits, right? And if it's near a nuclear power plant, then that's a whole nother issue. We could see meltdowns there and disruptions similar to Fukushima in Japan, where they had a major meltdown and they just had to release this toxic wastewater into the ocean. And then this wastewater actually ended up all the way over in California in the grapes, right? They can measure the radioactive cesium that is in the grapes that was released from Fukushima, right? They know the exact isotope of cesium that it was, and it traveled all the way over through rain, through ocean, and eventually these cesium particles ended up in the food supply, and it's even in the wine. If you test wine from California from the year of Fukushima, I don't remember what years, 2012, 2014, something like that. I don't remember the exact year. But if you test the wine from those years from California wine, you will see these cesium isotopes, and they actually use this as a way to verify that this wine is legit, right? It's one of the ways that they verify it. It's like, oh, it has this cesium, so it's from this year, and we know this wine is actually from this year. It's not a fake or anything like that. So this stuff ends up in the food supply, it ends up in the air, ends up in the water, okay? And think of all the other chaos that's also happening in Mexico that is bleeding into the United States every single day. This chaos. I see another story of another girl, another police officer, another kid, another woman, another man that's affected by this crisis that's happening. And this stuff is bleeding into our country, and it's so sad. And American citizens are being affected. Every few days, I'm seeing a news story of people being their entire lives ripped away. And if our country was shut down, secure, and safe, then this would have never even happened, because this person wouldn't have been allowed to be here in the first place. Okay, so we need the U.S. military at the border. I hope they stay there. I hope they stay at the border and protect it. All right, that's what they really need to do. We need to have 200 troops deployed to the border and defend it and protect it and keep it safe and secure. All right, but we saw these battles that happened when things like this, when like Texas, when these state governments try to do this, they're shut down, they're sued, they're stopped by the federal government, and they won't even allow them to protect our country. So that's what we're dealing with here. Things are wide open. The U.S. military should stay at the border, and they're also getting ready for a major disaster like this. All right, they've been doing a lot of prepping lately, and you should be too. All right, you should have, because the power might go out, the power lines might be affected, the towers might be affected, the power plants might be affected, so you might be out of power for weeks after one of these major earthquakes as well. So have a generator, right? I have a generator that I've used for years to live off grid in my RV, boondocking, right? And that thing has 10,000 hours on it. And it's no affiliation or anything. It's a Champion inverter generator, if you want to know, right? Champion, it's a great brand, and I have no complaints with it. Right? It's run great, just change the oil constantly. No affiliation. I don't get paid to say that or anything, right? But I'm just telling you guys, because I know it's a risk spending this money on a generator. It's kind of a risk, right? You don't want to just buy one that's a hunk of junk and gonna crap out on you after a few months, right? After 100 hours on it. So have these things, have food stored, have your preps, Get your homestead going, right? And you guys know, I've showed you guys a dozen times my chickens and stuff on here, stuff I'm working on here. All right, get that stuff going. It's critical more now than ever. All right, everyone can feel it. Something big's coming, whether it's natural, whether it's, who knows, manipulated, some weird experiment. They're always doing these crazy experiments. Who knows? Maybe they have something they can do with earthquakes now. They have all these technologies that we don't even really know about, these black budget technologies, black op programs. Who knows what kind of technologies are available? Maybe they can manipulate earthquakes. I'm not saying they can, but maybe they can. Maybe they have some kind of frequency technology, some kind of, maybe they can have an explosive on a fault line deep underground and it causes a disruption. Not saying those things are happening, but we're living in the Wild West here. All these wild experiments, all these things are happening. Everyone can feel it. Something big is coming soon. Whether it's financial, whether it's a cyber event, cyber attack, things getting shut down, earthquake, natural disaster. Everyone can feel it. Something big is coming soon. And take those gut feelings as instinct and use it to motivate yourself. That's what I do. Use these events as fire in your belly to get prepared and get ready. All right? It motivates me. Sometimes I get a little worn down too, right? These things are intense. But at the end of the day, I feel like I get more fired up than anything. I get more just like, all right, this is it. There's no time to waste for this, all right? It just becomes more serious every day, all right? So, and I'm not saying this is something's going to happen tomorrow or next week, but just be ready, be prepared. And if you are ready and you have these things in the bank for you, all right? You're putting preps away. You're not going to be as worried when these big things happen. You're going to be ready. You're going to know what to do, how to handle yourself. Mentally run yourself through these things. Get yourself ready mentally, spiritually. It's critical right now, right? So thank you guys. I hope you have big blessings for your life, your family,